The twin suns of Kepler 442c cast long shadows across the rusted metal structures of the abandoned mining facility. Red sand drifted between jagged ruins, carried by winds that whispered secrets of a once thriving operation. In this desolate landscape, Avenra crouched motionless atop a corroded observation tower, her scaled skin shifting subtly to match the copper-tinted metal beneath her. The hunt had stretched into its third month, far longer than any quarry had evaded her before. Through augmented vision, she tracked the lone figure moving deliberately through the wreckage below. Levi Morrison, human, Alliance operative, prey. Avenra's lips pulled back in a grimace that revealed teeth designed for efficiency rather than aesthetics. The Kithaeron Dominion had dispatched her, their most elite huntress, to demonstrate superiority over the Human Defense Alliance by capturing this particular specimen. The mission brief had described Morrison as resourceful, but ultimately a coward who had fled from direct confrontation 17 times. A simple task for one bred and enhanced for the hunt. Yet here she was, 78 days later, still pursuing. Avenra's slender fingers brushed across the ritual markings etched into her forearm, symbols representing her 27 previous successful hunts. The pride of the Kithaeron Council, the perfect weapon in their campaign to push humanity back from the contested border systems. She watched Morrison pause at an ancient console, connect some device, and begin downloading data. His movements were unhurried, almost casual, as if he weren't being stalked by the deadliest huntress in the Dominion. This time would be different. She had herded him toward the gorge's edge through careful maneuvering over the past week. The ravine dropped 300 meters to jagged rocks below. No escape routes remained. Avenra launched herself from the tower, her biomechanical enhancements absorbing the impact as she landed silently 30 meters behind her quarry. The perfect ambush position. "You're getting sloppy." "Huntress," Morrison said without turning, his voice carrying clearly across the distance between them. "I counted 6 loose stones dislodged during your descent." Avenra froze. Her quarry should not have detected her approach. No human could. "You might as well show yourself," he continued, still focused on the console. "We've been playing this game long enough, don't you think?" Avenra moved forward with liquid grace, her adaptive camouflage rippling as she fully revealed herself. Standing at her full height, she towered over the human by at least 30 centimeters. Her elongated limbs, reinforced skeletal structure, and predator's stance should have triggered immediate fear response. Morrison finally turned, and for the first time, Avenra looked directly into her prey's eyes. No fear, no panic, just a calm, analytical gaze that seemed to catalog her features with professional interest. "Fascinating," he said, disconnecting his device from the console. "You're from the Volari breeding complex, aren't you? The elongated metacarpals and specialized ocular structure are distinctive." Avenra hissed, a sound designed to paralyze prey with terror. "How do you know of Volari?" Morrison shrugged. "It's my job to know my enemy." He gestured to the gorge behind him. "Is this where you plan to corner me? Effective strategy, limited escape options. I appreciate the tactical thinking." "You speak as if you are not trapped," Avenra said, advancing another step. "Perception is subjective," Morrison replied. He secured his device in a pocket, and then, to Avenra's astonishment, turned his back on her and began walking along the gorge's edge, not in panic, but with the measured stride of someone taking an afternoon stroll. "Stop!" Avenra commanded, her voice carrying the full weight of Kithaeron authority. Morrison paused, glanced back. "The hunt's not over." Huntress. But perhaps it's time to reconsider who's hunting whom. Then he continued walking, disappearing behind a massive piece of fallen mining equipment. Avenra stood motionless, her perfect ambush shattered by confusion. In all her hunts, in all her training, no prey had ever reacted with such calm defiance. No quarry had ever walked away from her as if she posed no threat. The hunt had just become something else entirely. The mining facility's maze of conveyor tunnels and crushing equipment provided the perfect hunting ground. Narrow catwalks suspended over abandoned machinery created a three-dimensional battlefield that Avenra navigated with instinctive ease. She should have caught Morrison hours ago. Her enhanced musculature and reflexes were designed for explosive bursts of speed and lethal strikes. Yet the human moved through the complex with maddening deliberation, never rushing, never panicking, forcing her to sprint repeatedly to maintain pursuit through the labyrinthine structure. By the 7th hour, Avenra's breath came in ragged gasps. Kithaeron hunters were not built for endurance. They were ambush predators, striking with overwhelming force and ending confrontations in seconds. This prolonged chase violated every protocol in her training. She paused, crouched on a catwalk, and assessed her condition. The ritual markings etched into her skin were stained with sweat. Her temperature regulation was failing, core body heat dropping as exhaustion set in. Most disturbing was the tremor in her hands, a sign of metabolic distress she had never experienced before. A soft thud drew her attention. 20 meters ahead on the catwalk lay a small package. Morrison was nowhere in sight, but he had left this. What? Trap? Weapon? Avenra approached cautiously, senses alert for any trigger mechanism. The package was a simple thermal blanket, military grade, with Human Defense Alliance markings. Your species doesn't handle temperature drops well. Morrison's voice echoed from somewhere in the darkness above. Especially after extended exertion depletes your glycogen reserves. Avenra snarled, "I need no human charity." Not charity. Professional courtesy. His voice moved, impossible to pinpoint in the echoing chamber. The temperature will drop another 15 degrees when the secondary sun sets in approximately 40 minutes. Your thermoregulation is already compromised. How could you possibly know that? Avenra demanded. A short laugh answered her. Your skin pigmentation has shifted 3 times in the past hour. Classic sign of Kithaeron thermoregulatory stress. Avenra stared at the blanket. Taking anything from prey violated every tenet of the hunt. Yet the shivering had intensified, and her vision was beginning to blur at the edges. Symptoms her training identified as precursors to system failure. With a hiss of frustration, she snatched the blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. Immediate relief spread through her body as the material activated, generating heat that penetrated her cooling tissues. "Why would you help me?" she called into the darkness. "I am here to kill you." Are you? Morrison's voice had moved again. Or were you sent to die? Before Avenra could respond, a distant rumble shook the facility. Sand cascaded from overhead structures, pattering against metal surfaces like rain. "Sandstorm approaching," Morrison said, suddenly visible on a platform above her. Category 4. By the sound, this structure won't withstand it. He nodded toward the eastern exit. There's a cave system 3 kilometers east that offers better shelter. I suggest we continue our discussion there. Discussion? Avenra scoffed. This is a hunt. Human. Morrison's expression remained impassive. Is it? Then why am I still alive after 78 days? You've had at least 12 clear opportunities to strike. He turned and began climbing toward an access hatch. Storm hits in 20 minutes. Your choice. Huntress. Avenra watched him disappear through the hatch, Mind racing. How had he counted her opportunities? Had he been watching her as closely as she watched him? And most disturbing, why was he right about the missed chances to end this hunt? The facility groaned as another tremor passed through it. The decision made itself. Shelter first. Complete the hunt after the storm. She moved toward the eastern exit, the thermal blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. The sandstorm transformed the landscape into a howling nightmare of stinging particles and near-zero visibility. Avenra struggled forward, the thermal blanket now wrapped around her head and face, following Morrison's surprisingly steady form through the maelstrom. When they finally reached the cave entrance, a jagged tear in a cliff face, Avenra collapsed just inside the opening, her respiratory system struggling to filter the fine sand particles she'd inhaled. Morrison moved deeper into the cave without checking if she followed. The cave system bore scars from previous storms, smooth, polished sections where sand had scoured the rock, contrasted with rough, untouched areas protected from the wind's path. Morrison led them through 3 chambers before stopping in a roughly circular space with a high ceiling. Light filtered from small fissures above, casting eerie patterns across the floor. "We should be safe here," he said, removing his pack and extracting equipment with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, he had established a small heat source and was setting up what appeared to be communication equipment. Avenra watched from the cave entrance, her predator instincts at war with her growing curiosity. "You came prepared for this storm." Morrison nodded without looking up from his work. "I've been tracking the weather patterns. June through August is storm season on Kepler 442c. You've been here 3 months deliberately?" Avenra moved closer, drawn by the warmth of the heat source despite her wariness. "Longer, actually." He made a final adjustment to his equipment. "I arrived 2 weeks before you did." The implication struck Avenra like a physical blow. "You knew I was coming." "Not you specifically. But yes, we knew the Ketheran Council would send someone." He looked up, meeting her gaze directly. "Just as we knew they would choose someone expendable." "Expendable?" Avenra hissed, hand moving to the ceremonial blade at her hip. "I am elite caste, Valerie bred, the Council's most successful hunter. And yet they sent you alone, with minimal intelligence, against a target that has evaded capture for over 3 years." Morrison's expression softened slightly. "Have you never wondered why your superiors provided so little information about me?" Avenra's grip tightened on her blade. "They said you were a coward, that you fled from confrontation. And that made sense to you? That the Alliance would position a coward at the edge of contested space? That they would equip a non-combatant with top-level encryption and intelligence-gathering tools?" He gestured to the equipment he was setting up. Doubt crept into Avenra's mind, unwelcome and corrosive. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you weren't sent to hunt me. Avenra, you were sent to flush me out, to force me to reveal resources and contacts so that a secondary team could eliminate both of us." The use of her name, which she had never provided, sent a chill through Avenra that had nothing to do with the cave's temperature. "How do you know my designation?" Morrison tapped a sequence into his communication device. "Because your mission parameters were compromised 2 days after you left Ketheran space." The device activated, projecting a holographic display that showed Ketheran military documents that should have been inaccessible to any human. Avenra stared at the mission briefing with her designation and target information, then at the second document that made her blood freeze in her veins. Asset: Avenra Val 7. Status: deemed compromised termination. Protocol: authorized. "This is deception," she whispered, but the doubt in her voice betrayed her. "You know it isn't." Morrison replied quietly. The council sent an elite hunter, yes, but one they suspected had begun to question orders. One whose loyalty profiles showed deviation from acceptable parameters. Avenra's mind raced back through her recent hunts, the hesitation before her final strike on the Protean settlement, the captured Alliance scientist she had allowed to send a final message to his family before execution. Small mercies that no true Kithrin would have permitted. "The second team," she said, voice hollow. "When do they arrive?" Morrison checked his equipment. Based on communication intercepts, Hunter Pack Zeta entered the system approximately 6 hours ago. Avenra sank to her knees. Zeta Squad, led by Zara, the most ruthless hunter in the Dominion, not sent to assist, but to eliminate. Why tell me this? Why not let them kill me? Morrison deactivated the holographic display and moved to kneel before her, close enough that she could have struck with lethal force. Because 3 months ago, during the Procyon operation, you spared a human child who had witnessed your attack on the outpost. You hid her from the second wave of hunters and left supplies that kept her alive until rescue arrived. Avenra's eyes widened. No one knew about that. No one could have known. That child was my niece, Morrison said simply. Some debts transcend species. Huntress. The cave fell silent except for the howling wind outside and the occasional ping from Morrison's equipment. Avenra's world, built on absolute loyalty to the Council and the purity of the hunt, crumbled around her. "You have more to show me," she finally said. Morrison nodded and reactivated the display. "Everything the Council has hidden from you. Everything that led me to defect from Alliance intelligence when I discovered what both sides were really doing in the border systems." For the next 3 hours, as the storm raged outside, Avenra watched in growing horror as Morrison revealed atrocities committed by the Kithrin Council, genetic experiments on captive humans, deliberately collapsed colony habitats, biological weapons tested on civilian populations. Alongside these were equally disturbing files on Alliance black operations, weapons development, and targeted assassinations. Both sides claim to fight for survival, Morrison explained, but the leadership of both are fighting for power. They've turned the border systems into a laboratory where they can test weapons and tactics with impunity. When the display finally darkened, Avenra stared at her hands engineered for killing, attached to a body designed as a weapon. What choice do I have now? I cannot return to the Dominion. I cannot surrender to the Alliance. There is a third option, Morrison said. He activated a different file on his device, showing a small settlement on a green, mist-shrouded world. New Eden, a colony of defectors from both sides who refused to participate in the atrocities. Scientists, soldiers, civilians, all working to build something different. A fantasy, Avenra scoffed, but without conviction. A reality, Morrison countered, but reaching it will be difficult. First, we need to deal with Hunter Pack Zeta. Avenra's predatory instincts stirred at the challenge. Zara will have tracked us to this cave system. They will wait out the storm, then attack at dawn when they believe our defenses will be lowest. Then we should be elsewhere at dawn, Morrison said with the ghost of a smile, and perhaps leave them a welcome gift. For the first time since the hunt began, Avenra felt something unfamiliar stir within her, not the thrill of the chase or the satisfaction of a kill, but something far more dangerous. Hope. "Tell me your plan, human," she said. The storm abated an hour before dawn, leaving the landscape transformed. Dunes had shifted, revealing parts of the mining facility previously buried while concealing others. The gorge's edge, where Avenra had cornered Morrison just a day earlier, now overlooked a landscape that glittered with exposed mineral deposits uncovered by the scouring winds. Avenra and Morrison observed from a ridge 2 kilometers north of the cave system, camouflaged beneath a layer of red sand and sensor-blocking material. "They're coming," Avenra whispered, her enhanced vision detecting movement on the eastern approach. 4 hunters. Zara leads. As expected. Morrison adjusted the scope on his rifle. "Can you identify the others?" Corin, demolitions, specialist, Wraith, stealth expert, and Dex, the tracker. Avenra's voice carried grudging respect. Elite hunters. All of them. Zara has chosen her team well. "They're heading directly for the cave," Morrison noted. "Your assessment was correct." Avenra allowed herself a moment of pride. Kithaeron hunt protocols are predictable once you understand the underlying logic. Zara believes we sought shelter from the storm and are now sleep-deprived and vulnerable. The hunting party reached the cave entrance and paused. Even from this distance, Avenra could read their body language, the confident posture of predators closing in on wounded prey. 3 minutes until they trigger the first charge, Morrison said, checking the detonator in his hand. Avenra nodded, unconsciously moving closer to the human. Their plan was simple, but relied on precise timing and knowledge of Kithaeron tactical doctrine. The cave had been rigged with non-lethal charges designed to trigger a partial collapse of the entrance and temporarily disorient the hunters with light and sound. "Why non-lethal?" she had asked when Morrison explained the plan. "They come to kill us." "Because we prove ourselves different by the choices we make," he had answered. "Dead hunters tell no stories. Living ones who were shown mercy, they make leadership nervous." Now, watching Zara lead her team into the cave, Avenra wondered if mercy was wisdom or weakness. In all her training, mercy had been presented as the latter. "Now," Morrison said, pressing the detonator. Even at this distance, they felt the concussive force as the charges detonated in sequence. The cave entrance collapsed partially, and even through the dust cloud, Avenra could see the disorienting flash of the specialized grenades Morrison had placed inside. "Secondary charges in 30 seconds, Morrison reminded her. These would trigger a controlled avalanche in the narrow canyon leading to the cave, temporarily cutting off reinforcements or escape. Avenra watched, fascinated, as decades of tactical training battled with her new awareness. Part of her, the hunter part, calculated kill opportunities and efficient elimination strategies. Another part, one she barely recognized, considered Morrison's words about mercy and choices. The secondary charges detonated on schedule, sending a cascade of rock and sand into the canyon. Their path to the hunters was clear. "Ready?" Morrison asked, slinging his rifle and retrieving a smaller weapon that Avenra recognized as a neural disruptor. Painful but non-lethal. She nodded, unsheathing her hunting blades, but reconfiguring them to their stunning mode, rather than lethal edge. "I will take Zara and Corin. You focus on Wraith and Dex." "Agreed. Remember, we need at least one of them mobile enough to deliver our message." They moved with surprising synchronicity toward the cave, using the disturbed terrain for cover. Avenra found herself adapting to Morrison's movement patterns instinctively, just as she had once coordinated with fellow hunters during training exercises. But this was different. Fighting alongside prey against her own kind defied everything she had been taught. When they reached the partially collapsed cave entrance, Avenra signaled for Morrison to hold position. She could hear disoriented movement inside. The hunters were alive, but struggling with the after-effects of the flash grenades. Their enhanced senses, normally an advantage, had become a liability in the face of the sensory overload. Wraith will recover first, she whispered. His optical modifications include flash protection. As if summoned by her words, a shadow detached itself from the cave entrance and lunged toward them. Wraith, nearly invisible in his adaptive camouflage, but betrayed by the slight distortion of light around his form. Morrison fired the neural disruptor with calm precision. The blast caught Wraith mid-leap, sending convulsions through his body as he collapsed at their feet. The sound of the discharge alerted the remaining hunters. Corin emerged next, hurling a scatter grenade that forced Avenra and Morrison to dive in opposite directions. The momentary separation was all Dex needed to target Morrison, launching himself in a predatory arc that would have ended in a killing blow had Avenra not intercepted him mid-air. They crashed to the ground, Dex's surprise at being attacked by another Kithaeron giving Avenra the split-second advantage she needed. She drove her blade, set to stun, into the nerve cluster at the base of his spine. Dex's body went rigid, then limp. 2 down, 2 to go. Corin had retreated into the cave, using the partially collapsed entrance as cover while he prepared another explosive device. Zara was nowhere to be seen, a fact that concerned Avenra more than Corin's explosives. Of all the hunters, Zara was the most cunning and the most lethal. Circle left, Avenra told Morrison. Force Corin to divide his attention. Morrison nodded and began moving along the edge of the cave entrance. Avenra circled right, senses alert for any sign of Zara. The attack came from above. Zara dropped from an overlooked fissure in the cave ceiling, landing squarely on Avenra's shoulders. The impact drove Avenra to her knees, and she felt Zara's hunting blade press against the vulnerability point at the base of her skull. Traitor, Zara hissed, the word carrying all the disgust and rage of Kithaeron judgment. The council was right about you. Avenra didn't struggle. Any movement would trigger Zara's killing reflex. The council lied to all of us. Zara. Pray speak, Zara spat. You've been contaminated by human weakness. From the corner of her eye, Avenra could see Morrison frozen in place. Neural disruptor raised, but unable to fire without risking hitting her instead of Zara. Not weakness, Avenra replied. Choice. Something the council never permitted us. Zara's blade pressed harder, drawing blood. There is no choice. There is only the hunt and the kill. You were our best. Avenra. What happened to you? In that moment, with death a hair's breadth away, clarity struck Avenra with unexpected force. I saw truth. Zara. I saw that we're not weapons. We're slaves, bred for a purpose that serves only the council's ambition. The pressure of the blade faltered, just slightly. They sent you to die, just as they sent me. Avenra continued, sensing the microscopic shift in Zara's resolve. How many hunters have vanished on elite missions? How many questions were asked about their disappearance? Silence, Zara hissed, but the blade trembled against Avenra's skin. Show her, Avenra called to Morrison. Show her the files. Morrison slowly lowered his weapon and extracted the data device from his pocket. He activated it, projecting the same damning evidence he had shown Avenra, but specifically opened the file labeled Hunter Disposition Protocols. The holographic display showed lists of hunter designations, including Zara's own elite squad, with termination recommendations based on various factors: age, performance metrics, loyalty quotients, and most damning, replacement cost versus continued maintenance. Zara's grip loosened as she stared at the projection. Fabrication, she whispered, but without conviction. Truth, Avenra countered. We are equipment to them. Zara, expensive equipment with a limited service life. The moment stretched, balanced on a knife's edge. Then Corin emerged from the cave, explosive device primed and ready. Seeing Zara's hesitation, he snarled and hurled the device toward Morrison. Everything happened at once. Avenra tore free from Zara's loosened grip and lunged toward Morrison. Zara, recovering instantly, launched herself at Corin with a roar of rage. Morrison dove away from the explosive, which detonated against the canyon wall, sending a shower of debris raining down. When the dust settled, Corin lay unconscious, subdued by Zara's decisive attack. Zara herself stood panting, staring at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. "Why did you stop him?" Avenra asked, helping Morrison to his feet. Zara's expression was a storm of confusion and dawning horror. "I don't know. Instinct." She looked at the holographic display, still active and showing her own designation with a termination recommendation dated 3 months in the future. "Is all of this verified?" "Multiple sources," Morrison confirmed. "Alliance intelligence, intercepted Kitharan communications, and testimony from defectors on both sides." Zara's posture shifted subtly, the predatory aggression bleeding away into something more contemplative. "What happens now?" Avenra looked to Morrison, then back to Zara. "Now you make a choice. Return to the Council with a falsified report of our deaths, or come with us." "Us?" Zara's eyes narrowed. "You've aligned with prey?" "I've aligned with truth," Avenra corrected. "And with freedom. Something I never had until now." Morrison stepped forward. "We leave for New Eden within the hour. There's room for all of you who wish to come." Zara stared at her fallen team members, then at the data still floating in the air between them. "I need to think." "You have until we finish securing the others," Avenra said. She turned to help Morrison bind the unconscious hunters, leaving Zara alone with her thoughts and the devastating truth projected before her. By the time they had secured Wraith and Dex, Zara had made her decision. She approached them with the fluid grace of a Kitharan elite. But something had changed in her bearing, a subtle difference that only another hunter would notice. "I will return to the Dominion," she announced, "but I will carry your message." Avenra tensed, but Morrison placed a restraining hand on her arm. "What message?" he asked. "That hunters are beginning to hunt the truth," Zara replied, "and that some prey are worth protecting." She glanced at Corin, Wraith, and Dex. "I will tell them you died in the cave collapse. It will give you time." Avenra studied her fellow hunter's face, searching for deception and finding none. "Why would you do this?" "Because you spared us when you could have killed us," Zara said simply. "That requires consideration." Morrison nodded. "The others?" "Corin will follow me. Wraith and Dex." Zara hesitated. "Their loyalty programming runs deeper. They cannot be trusted." "We have technology that can help with that," Morrison said. "If they choose to come with us." Zara's expression registered surprise, then understanding. "You've developed counter-programming." "The Alliance has been working on it for years," Morrison confirmed. "It's not perfect, but it offers a chance at genuine autonomy." Zara nodded once. Decision made. "Take them. Then, their disappearance will reinforce the story of your deaths." She turned to leave, then paused. "Avenra." "Yes?" "Was it worth it, betraying everything you were made to be?" Avenra considered the question, feeling Morrison's presence beside her. Not prey, not enemy, but something she had no programming to categorize. "I wasn't betraying what I am," she finally answered. "I was discovering it." Zara absorbed this, then melted into the landscape with the liquid grace of a Kitharan elite on the hunt. Avenra turned to Morrison. "Will she keep her word?" "I don't know," he admitted, But she'll buy us time, regardless of her intentions. And time is what we need now. He activated his communication device. Shepard, this is Pathfinder. Package secured. 4 for extraction. A crackled response came through. Confirmed. Pathfinder. Rendezvous at coordinates Echo 7. Phoenix awaits. Avenra looked at the still unconscious forms of Wraith and Dex. And if they choose to return to the Dominion after the counter-programming? Then they choose, Morrison said simply. That's what this is all about. Avenra. Not which side is right, but the freedom to decide for yourself. As they prepared the unconscious hunters for transport, Avenra felt the weight of her ritual markings, the 27 successful hunts etched into her skin. For the first time, she wondered about those she had hunted. Had they been guilty of anything beyond making choices the Council disapproved of? Levi, she said, using his first name for the first time. What if I've been wrong about everything? Morrison, Levi, looked up from his work, his expression softening. Then you start getting things right. One choice at a time. It wasn't an answer that fit any Kithaeron protocol or training module. It offered no certainty, no clear path forward. Yet somehow, it was exactly what Avenra needed to hear. The hyperspace journey to New Eden stretched into its 3rd week. Aboard the Phoenix, a retrofitted Alliance scout vessel, Avenra discovered a new kind of hunt, the pursuit of skills and knowledge never permitted by her Kithaeron conditioning. Levi taught her ship maintenance, navigation, and the basics of the complex network of safe houses and hidden routes that defectors use to escape the conflict zone. Other crew members, a mixture of ex-Alliance personnel and civilian specialists, showed her farming techniques, construction methods, and medical care practices. Most surprising was the emergence of Wraith and Dex as reluctant allies. The counter-programming had worked, breaking the Kithaeron Council's hold on their minds without erasing their skills or personalities. They remained hunters at heart, but now they chose their targets: corruption, exploitation, and those who would drag defectors back into the conflict. At night, in the quiet hours when the ship's systems hummed in low-power mode, Avenra would often find Levi in the observation dome, staring out at the streaking lights of hyperspace. She would join him in comfortable silence, their shoulders occasionally touching, a proximity that would have been unthinkable months earlier. "Do you regret it?" she asked him during one such night. "Leaving the Alliance?" Levi considered the question with his characteristic thoughtfulness. "Sometimes I miss the certainty," he admitted. "Having clear objectives, defined enemies, structured purpose. But certainty is often just another word for blindness. The Council provided perfect certainty," Avenra agreed, "and perfect blindness. What about you? Do you miss the hunt?" Avenra flexed her hands, feeling the predator's strength still coiled in her muscles. "I miss the clarity of it. Predator and prey. Hunter and hunted. Simple roles with no moral complexity." She paused, searching for words to express concepts she was still learning. "But I've discovered that the true hunt isn't for prey, it's for understanding." Levi smiled, the expression warming his usually serious features. "Dangerous talk. Huntress. Next you'll be philosophizing about the meaning of existence." "Perhaps I already am," she replied, returning his smile with one of her own, an expression that still felt foreign on her face, but increasingly natural. The moment stretched between them, comfortable yet charged with unspoken awareness. Then Levi reached out and gently traced one of the ritual markings on her forearm, a gesture so intimate that Avenra felt her breath catch. "These tell your story," he said softly. "But they're not the whole story anymore, are they?" "No," she whispered. "They're just the beginning." His hand moved from her arm to her face, fingers lightly brushing her cheek. Avenra! The ship's alarm cut through the moment, signaling proximity to their destination. Levi's hand dropped away as the captain's voice came over the communication system. All hands to stations. Approaching New Eden. Stealth systems engaged. They rose in unison, the conversation suspended, but not forgotten, and made their way to the bridge. The main view screen showed a green-blue planet, partially shrouded in luminous mist, orbiting a yellow star remarkably similar to Earth's sun. "Atmospheric scans clear," reported the navigator. "No pursuit detected. Descent vector plotted for Settlement Alpha." As the Phoenix entered the planet's atmosphere, Avenra felt a strange sensation in her chest, a tightness that had nothing to do with the ship's gravitational compensators struggling against planetary pull. This world, with its verdant expanses and swirling mists, represented something she had never been programmed to expect, a future of her own choosing. The ship descended through cloud layers into a valley nestled between forested mountains. A settlement spread below them, not the stark, utilitarian structures of Kithran design, nor the sprawling chaos of human colonies, but something that seemed to grow from the landscape itself. Terraced gardens climbed hillsides, structures incorporated living trees, and waterways had been guided rather than conquered. "New Eden," Levi said beside her, his voice carrying a note of pride. "Home to 837 defectors from both sides of the conflict, and now, home to 4 more. As the Phoenix settled onto a landing pad constructed of native stone and reclaimed ship parts, Avenra saw people emerging from the settlement to greet them, humans and Kitharans moving together without hostility, some even in evident friendship. Children, including young Kitharans who would have been training for their first hunt in the Dominion, played in gardens where food grew alongside flowers, cultivated simply for beauty. The ship's ramp extended, and fresh air carried scents of growing things, cooking food, and clean water, sensory information that Avenra's hunter training categorized as irrelevant, but which now filled her with unexpected pleasure. Levi stood at the top of the ramp and extended his hand to her. "Ready?" Avenra looked at his offered hand, then at the community waiting below. A final hunt lay before her, the pursuit of a life never imagined, never permitted, never programmed. She placed her hand in his, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. "Ready," she confirmed, and together they descended into their new beginning. 6 months passed, like water flowing through the streams of New Eden, sometimes swift and turbulent, sometimes peaceful and clear, but always moving forward. Avenra adapted to settlement life with the same intensity she had once brought to the hunt, throwing herself into learning agriculture, construction, and community governance with single-minded determination. The transition wasn't always smooth. Her first attempts at farming had resulted in overwatered crops. Her construction projects often had to be dismantled and rebuilt, and her contributions to community meetings frequently came across as overly direct. But the people of New Eden, accustomed to integrating former soldiers and operatives from both sides, showed remarkable patience. Most surprisingly, Avenra discovered an unexpected talent for teaching. Young Kitharans in the settlement, removed from the Dominion's harsh training protocols, still possessed their species' natural hunting instincts. Rather than suppressing these traits, Avenra channeled them into constructive skills, tracking animals to study migration patterns, using enhanced strength for emergency rescue operations, applying tactical thinking to environmental management. Levi, meanwhile, had taken on the role of security coordinator, using his intelligence background to maintain the settlement's early warning systems and coordinate with the network of defectors still operating in Alliance and Dominion space. Their professional relationship evolved alongside their personal one, each finding in the other a balance to their strengths and weaknesses. Their first kiss had come 3 months after arrival, neither planned nor expected, but somehow inevitable, like two stars whose orbits had been gradually converging since that first confrontation on Kepler 442c. Physical intimacy between their species had required adaptation and discovery, but they approached it as they did everything else, with patience, communication, and a willingness to learn. Now, standing on the terrace of the home they shared, a structure partially built into a living oak-like tree overlooking the main settlement, Avenra watched the evening activity below with contentment that still occasionally surprised her. Farmers returning from fields, children being called to evening meals, artisans closing workshops as lights came on in communal gathering spaces. "Security perimeter check complete," Levi said, joining her on the terrace. "All systems nominal." Avenra smiled at his use of official terminology. Some habits died hard for both of them. "You're still expecting trouble?" "Always," he admitted, slipping an arm around her waist. "Occupational hazard of former spies and hunters." "But no sign of pursuit?" "None. Zara appears to have kept her word." Avenra leaned into his embrace, her head resting against his shoulder. "Do you think she found her own way out?" "I hope so," Levi said. "Hope is another habit I'm trying to cultivate." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the moons rise over the eastern mountains. Then Avenra stiffened, her enhanced senses detecting something Levi's wouldn't for several more seconds. "Ships," she said, nodding toward the southern sky. 3. No. 4 vessels on approach trajectory. Levi was instantly alert, hand moving to the communication device at his belt. "Alliance or Dominion?" "Kithaeron design," Avenra confirmed as the distant shapes became visible even to human eyes. "Scout-class vessels. Minimal weaponry, but built for speed." Levi activated the settlement alert system, sending a coded warning to all security stations. Within moments, the peaceful evening transformed as people moved with practiced efficiency toward shelter areas. Defense systems, carefully concealed within the natural landscape. Powered up. "I need to get to the command center," Levi said, already moving toward the stairs. Avenra caught his arm. "Wait. Look at their approach vector." The incoming vessels had altered course, forming a circular pattern rather than the standard Kithaeron attack formation. As they watched, the lead ship transmitted a light signal. 3 long pulses, followed by 2 short. "That's the old hunter recognition code," Avenra said, disbelief coloring her voice. "Specifically, the variant used by elite units." "Zara?" Levi questioned. "Possibly." Avenra focused her enhanced vision on the lead vessel. "No weapons hot. They're coming in passive." Levi hesitated, calculating risks and possibilities. "Could be a trap. Could be refugees," Avenra countered. "Like we were." The decision balanced on a knife's edge. Then Levi nodded once and modified the alert code, changing it from imminent threat to cautious reception. The settlement's defense systems remained active, but did not target the approaching vessels. "If you're wrong about this," Levi began. Avenra squeezed his hand. "Then we face it together." They made their way quickly to the landing field where the Phoenix had brought them 6 months earlier. Other settlement leaders had already gathered, a mixture of former Alliance officers, Kithaeron defectors, and civilian specialists who formed New Eden's governing council. The 4 vessels landed with the precision characteristic of Kithaeron pilots. For long moments, nothing happened. Then the lead ship's hatch opened, and a familiar figure emerged. "Zara," Avenra breathed. The Kithaeron hunter looked different. Her ritual markings had been altered, and she carried herself with less of the predatory tension that had once defined her. Behind her came other Kitherans, mostly younger ones with minimal markings, and, most surprisingly, a handful of humans. Zara approached the reception committee, stopping at a respectful distance. Avenra, Morrison, I seek sanctuary for these defectors. Levi stepped forward. What happened? The council found my report unconvincing. Zara's mouth twisted in a grim smile. Fortunately, your evidence proved more persuasive to others. When the purge began, we managed to extract these trainees and personnel before they could be terminated. Purge? Avenra asked. The council is eliminating anyone they suspect of disloyalty. Your disappearance started a cascade of questioning among the Hunter Corps. Zara gestured to the ships behind her. We salvaged what we could. Weapons, supplies, information. Levi studied the group of defectors. And the humans? Alliance prisoners scheduled for experimentation. We liberated them during our extraction. Zara's expression remained carefully neutral. Consider it a gesture of good faith. The Settlement Council conferred briefly. Then a former Alliance commander named Eliza stepped forward. We need to verify your intentions and the status of these refugees. Standard protocols apply. Quarantine period, interviews, skills assessment. Zara nodded. Understood. We anticipated as much. She turned to Avenra. Your message was received. Hunter, others will follow if they can. As the new arrivals were guided toward the settlement's quarantine facilities, Avenra and Levi remained at the landing field, watching the moons climb higher in the night sky. It's starting, Levi said quietly. What is? The real rebellion. Not alliance versus dominion, but people versus the systems that use them as weapons. He turned to face her. Are you ready for what comes next? More refugees, possibly pursuit. Definitely challenges to everything we've built here. Avenra looked back at the settlement, lights glowing in windows, people moving with purpose rather than fear, despite the unexpected arrivals. Then she looked at Levi, the human who had shown her a path beyond the hunt. I was created to be a weapon, she said, designed for lethal efficiency, programmed for obedience, conditioned to view compassion as weakness. She touched the ritual markings on her arm, symbols of a past that no longer defined her. But true evolution lies not in what we're made to be, but in what we choose to become. And what do you choose? Levi asked, his voice soft. Avenra smiled, a full, genuine expression that transformed her predator's features into something the council would never have recognized. I choose to be a guardian rather than a hunter, to protect the possibility of choice for others. She took his hand in hers. And I choose you, every day, in ways my creators never imagined possible. The kiss they shared beneath New Eden's moons sealed a compact that transcended species, transcended programming, transcended the artificial divisions of a conflict neither had chosen, but both had found the courage to reject. Later that night, standing on their terrace once more, Avenra watched the stars and contemplated the strange journey that had brought her here, from elite huntress to defector to builder of a new society, a transformation that had begun the moment a human had looked into her eyes without fear and offered not submission, but challenge. The true hunt, she had discovered, was not for prey, but for purpose, not for kills, but for connection, not for victory, but for understanding. And in that hunt, she had found something the council had never anticipated and could never control: the power to choose her own evolution, to remake herself not as a more efficient weapon, but as a more complete being. The night wind, carried the sense of New Eden's gardens, and somewhere in the distance, voices raised in song drifted up from the settlement below. Avenra closed her eyes and breathed it all in, the sweet evidence that even those created for war could learn to cultivate peace. The hunt was over. Life had begun.